Well, I think Obama initially wanted to placate the Saudis in their regional agenda so that they wouldn't kick up a storm over the Iran nuclear deal. The Saudis feared after the Iran nuclear deal that the United States would perhaps tilt towards Iran or perhaps take a more standoffish approach towards the region. And so they kind of threw a tantrum and dared the United States to support its efforts in Yemen. And since then, the Trump administration came into office saying, we're going to double down on our traditional allies, particularly Saudi Arabia and Israel, but also many of the other Gulf states, in our effort to squeeze Iran. And so much of this centers around Iran policy. But the reality is that, the Saudis aren't a strategic asset in terms of U.S. interests. In fact, they undermine U.S. interests roughly the same amount that the Iranian regime does. I mean, they say Iran supports proxies in the region that engage in really nasty behavior. So do the Saudis. They say Iran has a dictatorial regime that abuses its own people. Also true in Saudi Arabia, perhaps more so. And the Saudis are kicking up a lot of destabilizing efforts in the region, from kidnapping the prime minister of Lebanon to a war in Yemen, which has not only caused immense human suffering, but has also bolstered the position of al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula. So the Saudis are not useful in terms of pursuing U.S. interests, and they often undermine U.S. interests. So we should tell them very clearly, we're not going to continue to enable war crimes, and we're going to insist that the blockade be lifted and that humanitarian aid get into Yemen. And yes, we should use our leverage to try and negotiate an end to the war, but we shouldn't ignore our own culpability in this mess.